What you reading for? What are you reading?
You remember why you quit the modern world and took up the life of a barbarian?
Benedict Donald.
This is the record of the FBI investigation into the Trump campaign. Interested?
Yeah, what does it say?
It uncovers much that was hidden from me.
I didn't think anything was hidden from you. Aren't you an oracle?
No, I just read a lot. Are you ready to hear what it says?
Yeah.
Then be prepared for a tale of greed, disloyalty, sexism, and woe.
Whoa.
In March 2019, former FBI Director Robert Mueller released the results of his investigation into collaboration between the presidential campaign of Donald Trump and the Russian government headed by Vladimir Putin. Volume 1 of his report focuses on the Russians, while Volume 2 focuses on Trump's efforts to impede Mueller's investigation. Volume 1, The Russians, is the largest piece of a greater puzzle, one which, when assembled, shows the 2016 election as a contest between Vladimir Putin and Hillary Clinton, a chess game with the fate of the United States at stake. The rivalry between Putin and Clinton begins in 2011. As Secretary of State, Clinton takes the diplomatic lead in building an international coalition to bring down Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, an ally of Putin's. Later that year, the integrity of Russia's legislative elections are challenged when evidence of electoral fraud is recorded on smartphones and shared on social media. When protests begin, Clinton states her concern that Putin is stifling the voices of the Russian people. Putin sees in her statements a threat to his presidency. He suppresses the protests, which subside by July 2013, but he never forgets what she did to Gaddafi, and he is determined not to let her do it to him. In November 2013, the Miss Universe beauty pageant is held at Crocus City Hall in a Moscow suburb. The Miss Universe pageant is owned by Donald Trump. Crocus City Hall is owned by a Russian real estate conglomerate run by Aras Agalarov, who has ties to Vladimir Putin. Agalarov's son, Emin, is a popular music star in Russia, and Miss Universe contestants, and Donald Trump, appear in one of his music videos. Shortly after the pageant, Trump's people and Agalarov's people begin discussing a real estate project, known to us as Trump Tower Moscow. In February 2014, Trump's daughter, Ivanka, tours the Crocus City site with Emin as her guide. While this is happening, Ukraine tosses out its pro-Russian president. Russia responds by seizing Ukraine's province of Crimea and sparking civil war in 2 eastern provinces. These actions prompt condemnation from Hillary Clinton, now preparing to run for president. Her hawkish response provokes Putin's ire. The contest between them begins. Through 2014, while Trump Tower Moscow is under consideration, the Russian government lays the foundations for what it terms information warfare, with which it plans to provoke and amplify political and social discord in the United States. The Russian Federation is an authoritarian oligarchic republic. The oligarchs are a group of approximately 50 Russian businessmen who meet regularly with Putin in the Kremlin, and to whom Putin makes suggestions and critiques, which are always taken as implicit orders. One oligarch is Yevgeny Prigozhin, known as Putin's chef, because he owns restaurants and catering businesses which often host Russian state dinners. Prigozhin funds an organization called the Internet Research Agency, enabling it to carry out information warfare against the United States. The agency hires Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram specialists. Before the end of 2014, the agency begins selecting Americans who can be used to advance Putin's interests. In the meantime, negotiations over Trump Tower Moscow stall. The Trump Organization responds to Agalarov with decreasing frequency, and there is no communication with him after November 24th. Early in 2015, the Internet Research Agency creates social media groups often mimicking real organizations such as the Tennessee Republican Party, Tea Party activists, and Black Lives Matter protesters. On March 2nd, the New York Times breaks the story that a Republican panel investigating the 2012 attack on American facilities in Libya, the 6th such investigation by Republicans in Congress, has discovered Clinton's use of a private email server. Republicans seize on this to paint Clinton as corrupt and lawless. The truth of her emails is rather prosaic. The State Department had no way to link her personal smartphone and laptop with her department email. She didn't want to travel with 2 sets of phones and laptops, and she had been using her own email address on her husband's server for years. It was not best practices for record-keeping or for computer security, but it worked for her. Server management best practices were also not in place, as it was only after the server's existence became public knowledge that her technician got around to deleting over 30,000 personal emails she had requested removed months earlier. This delay spawns 1,000 conspiracy memes, all of them bullshit.
Was she the first to do that?
Her predecessor as Secretary of State, Colin Powell, had exclusively used a private email account.
So it was okay when a man did it.
Not just men. In March 2019, the media reported that 7 members of the Trump regime, including Trump's daughter, were also mixing government and personal email accounts.
Of course they were.
In June 2015, Donald Trump announces his run for president with a speech that includes anti-Hispanic racism, anti-Muslim bigotry, implausible stories, and ignorant claims, including a bizarre assertion that the gross domestic product is below 0. The first poll in which he is included puts him at 3.2%, but his bigotry, fabulism, and ignorance appeal to a great many people. His candidacy taps into a deep vein of resentment running through white America. 5 weeks after his announcement, he is polling at over 16%. Meanwhile, her emails takes shape as a major scandal. On June 24th, the New York Times runs a story stating that the FBI has started a criminal investigation into her emails. In September, Trump receives a new inquiry from a Russian company about Trump Tower Moscow. The inquiring company is represented by Felix Sater, a mobster and real estate advisor. Trump authorizes his lawyer and Trump Organization Vice President Michael Cohen to negotiate on his behalf. Given the size of the project, Sater and Cohen believe they need approval from the Russian government. On October 12th, Sater tells Cohen that if they get Putin on board, they are golden. Sometime in the next 3 weeks, Trump signs a letter of intent to pursue the Trump Tower Moscow project with Sater and those he represents. In November, Julian Assange, founder of the anti-secrecy group WikiLeaks, writes to members and associates of WikiLeaks in support of Trump. He says that Clinton lacks judgment and that it would be better for Trump to win because liberals, Democrats, and the media would rein in his worst qualities. At this time, Assange resides in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, seeking to avoid extradition to Sweden to face rape charges. That same month, the Russians attempt to organize a Confederate rally in Houston through an Instagram account called Stand for Freedom. Meanwhile, in the Trump Organization, Felix Sater suggests to Cohen that Trump Tower Moscow could help Trump's chances in the election, and that Trump should travel to Russia. Toward the end of 2015, a longtime Republican Senate staffer initiates efforts to find Clinton's deleted personal emails. It is her belief that Clinton's server has already been breached by governments hostile to American interests. On December 3rd, she emails a person active in Republican politics with a proposal to seek the emails through a contact who has obtained them from Chinese, Russian, and Iranian intelligence services.
The fact that you're consulting a hostile country to win may be a big hint you're doing something wrong.
Perhaps not. It depends on where one's true loyalties lie. It will not be the last time that conservatives look favorably on hostile foreign governments. On December 20th, Trump praises Putin as a strong leader. The year 2016 dawns with frustration in the Trump Organization. Irritated by Sater's failure to set up a meeting with Russian government officials about Trump Tower Moscow, Cohen directly emails Putin's deputy chief of staff. A few days later, the deputy's personal assistant speaks with Cohen by phone, but there is never any further action. Meanwhile, Sater sends Cohen an invitation to meet in Russia, but Cohen declines due to a lack of concrete proposals about suitable land plots for Trump Tower Moscow. Before the end of January, the Trump campaign gains a volunteer, Carter Page, who brags of discussions he has had with individuals tied to the Kremlin. He holds out the possibility of a meeting between Trump and Putin. Page, while living and working in Russia as head of his own investment firm, had been approached by Russian intelligence as far back as 2008. By February 2016, the Russians have decided that the best way to weaken the United States is to attack the campaign of Hillary Clinton and support the campaign of Donald Trump.
You know, if I were running for president and I found out a hostile country supported me, I'd reconsider what I was doing.
Again, it depends on where one's true loyalties lie. In March, Russian military intelligence hacks the Clinton campaign, including the campaign manager's email account. That same month, WikiLeaks releases a searchable archive of Clinton emails, obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, in a bid to be seen as a player in the election, and perhaps be sent even more important leaks. By this time, the Trump campaign has been receiving media criticism for a lack of foreign policy expertise. On the 21st of March, the campaign formally names Carter Page a foreign policy advisor, as well as George Papadopoulos, a 28-year-old research assistant from a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C. 3 days later, Papadopoulos is in London, where he is introduced to a Putin-connected woman who dangles the prospect of a meeting between Putin and campaign officials, even Trump. At the meeting of the campaign's foreign policy team on March 31st, Papadopoulos mentions the possibility of a Trump-Putin meeting. Trump is receptive. By this time, the Trump campaign has brought on board Paul Manafort, a longtime lobbyist with pro-Russian connections in Ukraine. Additionally, Russian operatives with the Internet Research Agency have begun buying anti-Clinton ads on Facebook and Instagram. Social media is weaponized. In April, Russian military intelligence hacks into Democratic Party computers and steals documents, then registers a domain called dcleaks.com in preparation for publishing them. Papadopoulos continues his efforts to connect the Trump campaign with the Russians directly. On April 25th, he tells the campaign's senior policy advisor that Russia has an open invitation for Trump to meet Putin. The next day, Papadopoulos learns from a London connection that the Russians have thousands of Clinton emails. While there is no indication he ever told anyone in the campaign about this, he is so pleased with having this secret that a week later he brags to an Australian diplomat that the Russians have dirt on Clinton. In May, there are further efforts to put the Trump campaign in contact with the Russians. Felix Sater continues trying to bring Trump to Russia. He invites Cohen to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Cohen shows some interest. Meanwhile, Manafort meets with a former employee, Konstantin Kilimnik, who is a pro-Russian Ukrainian with ties to Russian intelligence. Following this meeting, Manafort arranges for Kilimnik to receive internal campaign polling data. He expects Kilimnik to share it with a Russian oligarch close to Putin. 2 weeks later, Manafort is promoted from convention manager to campaign manager and chief strategist. June sees the strongest efforts yet by the Russians to make connections with the Trump campaign. Prigozhin's Internet Research Agency reaches out to campaign volunteers to coordinate rallies, but gets only minimal help. None of the volunteers know they are in contact with Russians. However, several high-level individuals are well aware that the Russians want to help them win. On June 3rd, pop star Emin Agalarov's publicist, who had helped on the original Trump Tower Moscow negotiations, sends an email to Trump's son, Donald Jr. This email states that the Russian government has documents which incriminate Clinton in her dealings in Russia, and they want to give those documents to the Trump campaign. Trump Jr.'s response, "I love it." On June 9th, 2016, senior representatives of the Trump campaign met in Trump Tower with a Russian attorney, expecting to receive derogatory information about Hillary Clinton from the Russian government.
Does the Mueller Report actually say that?
It does. On June 9th, 2016, senior representatives of the Trump campaign met in Trump Tower with a Russian attorney, expecting to receive derogatory information about Hillary Clinton from the Russian government.
From the Russian government. How is that not treason?
It's unsuccessful. The meeting is anticlimactic. Trump's son, Donald Jr., his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and campaign manager Paul Manafort meet with the Russians, who hint that funds derived from illegal activities in Russia were provided to Clinton and other Democrats. At that time, they offer no proof that they can deliver what they claim. Instead, they go on to critique sanctions against Russian officials. Trump's people are so disappointed at not getting what they want up front that they wrap up the meeting early and never bother to engage with the Russians again.
How do we know the Russians didn't want something in exchange, feeling them out?
We don't, but it's as close as the Trump campaign ever got to collaboration with the Russians. You seem troubled.
They collaborated with a hostile country. How is a meeting like that even legal?
When Mueller obtained the details of this meeting, he did consider charging the participants with violations of campaign law. The law as written, however, requires that the violation must be knowing and willful. Consequently, the participants were not charged because their likely ignorance of the law would forestall a conviction.
Being stupid should not be a defense.
It is a defense if the law is written that way.
Can we change the law, please?
A few days after the Trump Tower meeting, Julian Assange, who still resides in the Ecuadorian embassy in order to avoid facing rape charges, publicly claims to have emails relating to Hillary Clinton. He says no more at the time, but on June 14th, the Democrats announced their network has been breached. That same day, Russian military intelligence uses the DC Leaks persona to connect with Assange's WikiLeaks. Also on the same day, WikiLeaks initiates contact with a hacker by the name of Guccifer 2.0, requesting stolen material that they can publish in order to harm Hillary Clinton. Like DC Leaks, Guccifer 2.0 is a Russian military intelligence persona. The Russians do not respond immediately through Guccifer 2.0 because the Democrats' announcement about the hacking spurs them to start publishing the stolen documents, with Guccifer 2.0 claiming they were obtained from a lone Romanian hacker. Meanwhile, though Cohen would later state under oath that Trump Tower Moscow negotiations had ended in January, it is now, in June, that his efforts on Trump's behalf end. Cohen meets Sater in the lobby of Trump Tower, New York, and states he will not be traveling to Russia because Sater never obtained a formal invitation for him. As the summer heats up, the FBI completes its look at her emails. On July 5th, FBI Director James Comey, in what the Inspector General of the Department of Justice would later describe as an extraordinary and insubordinate action, holds a press conference. Essentially in defiance of his female superiors, Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates and Attorney General Loretta Lynch, Comey personally presents the summary of the Her Emails investigation. In an unusual step, he condemns Clinton as extremely careless in handling classified information. While Comey delivers his extraordinary and insubordinate remarks, Trump campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page travels on personal business to Russia. Many of his activities in Russia remain unknown, but in a July 7th speech at Moscow's new economic school, Page criticizes American focus on democratization, inequality, corruption, and regime change.
Why would Americans speak against democratization? Aren't we big about spreading democracy?
You might as well ask why someone would criticize efforts to reduce inequality and corruption. In July, Democrats and Republicans rally around Clinton and Trump respectively. Russian military intelligence officers exploit software vulnerabilities to target state and local government systems. Guccifer 2.0 sends WikiLeaks 20,000 stolen Democratic documents on July 14th. Days later, WikiLeaks releases them to the world. On July 19th, as the Republicans formally nominate Donald Trump for the presidency, Charlie Rose of CBS News harshly and relentlessly grills Clinton about her emails. 16 months later, Rose would be fired for serial sexual harassment. When George Papadopoulos bragged to an Australian diplomat about the Russians having dirt on Hillary Clinton, the Australians took note. Toward the end of July, Australia warns the United States that Russia wants to help the Trump campaign. The FBI opens a counterintelligence investigation into whether the Trump campaign is coordinating with the Russian government. By this time, it is clear that Trump wants Russia's help. On July 27th, the day after the Democrats formally nominate Hillary Clinton for the presidency, Trump says during a press conference, "Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing." 5 hours later, Russian military intelligence targets Clinton's office for the first time.
He did it in front of everyone, and no one wants to call it treason. I'll call it treason. It's treason.
You can't do a citizen's arrest on the president.
Why not?
Because the Secret Service will arrest you.
Oh, I forgot about the Secret Service.
2 days after the FBI begins investigating Russian connections to the Trump campaign, Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, meets with his former employee, Konstantin Kilimnik. Over dinner, they discuss a peace plan for Ukraine that would result in carving out an autonomous region headed by a Russian puppet. They go on to discuss campaign strategy in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Though Manafort has been sharing internal campaign polling data with Kilimnik with the expectation it would be passed to a man close to Putin, there is no indication that anyone in the Russian government passed along suggestions and critiques to Manafort through Kilimnik. However, because American media are noticing the large number of Russian connections to Trump, Manafort is becoming a liability to the campaign. On August 19th, Manafort resigns. Evidence of Russian efforts to help elect Trump is so strong that in early September, James Comey and the Secretary of Homeland Security go to Capitol Hill to brief congressional leaders. Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell rejects the evidence he has shown and states that he will consider any effort by the White House to challenge the Russians publicly an act of partisan politics. The public does not learn of this meeting or McConnell's part in covering up Russian interference until after the election.
The Republicans call themselves patriots. How is that patriotic?
As I keep telling you, it depends on where one's true loyalties lie. Some elements of the media don't take a great interest in Trump's visible connections to Russia. On September 8th, Matt Lauer of NBC News interviews Clinton and Trump. He is soft on Trump, asking easy questions about his background and preparation, and hard on Clinton, interrupting her and talking over her. 15 months later, Lauer would be fired for serial sexual harassment. Despite media obsession with her emails, Trump-Russia links are becoming an embarrassment to the Trump campaign. In late September, word leaks to the press of Carter Page's trip to Moscow, his pro-Russia advocacy, and the fact that American intelligence is investigating him. Following these reports, Page is removed from the Trump campaign. When Papadopoulos gives an interview to Russian news agency Interfax that generates adverse publicity for the Trump campaign, he is dismissed in early October. The presidential game begins its final moves. On October 7th, there is a shock to the Trump campaign. The Washington Post publishes a video from 2005 in which Donald Trump brags about sexual assault. This video has the potential to bury his campaign. But less than an hour later, WikiLeaks publishes the first set of emails stolen from Clinton's campaign manager. This revives the media's obsession with her emails. Record-keeping and computer security best practices once again become a major theme in campaign coverage. Sexual assault allegations do not.
Did we ever find out why the media cared so much about her emails?
No consistent answer has ever been offered. We learned last year that Trump himself uses an unsecured smartphone, an even greater security risk than mixing private and government emails. Yet the media no longer cares about IT security best practices. Why do you think that is?
Because Trump is a man, he's seen as a legitimate candidate. Because Clinton's a woman, she's seen as illegitimate. If it hadn't been about her emails, it would have been about something else.
Perhaps. Remember, though, she did prove her competence to both the political establishment and a plurality of voters. Not that it mattered. October draws to a close. Although Clinton has the edge, this brutal campaign has left her badly positioned. The campaign is closer than it should have been. Even so, despite the best efforts of the Russian government, she stands poised to win. On October 20th, her overall polling average is 6 percentage points ahead of Trump. All of Russia's strategies have come to nothing, or they would have if not for one more surprise. On October 28th, Comey announces he has found more emails relevant to her emails. A media obsessed with her emails amplifies this announcement. It's the last days of the campaign. She has no time to clear her name. Hundreds of thousands of last-minute voters decide against her, which is enough to put Trump over the top in 3 states about which Manafort and Kilimnik had discussed campaign strategy: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. This is all Trump needs to claim victory.
The Russians would have failed without Comey?
Probably.
Was Comey working with the Russians?
You might very well think that. I couldn't possibly comment. You'll recall I likened the election to a chess game between Putin and Clinton. It's not without reason. Consider this. Kirill Dmitriev is the head of Russia's sovereign wealth fund. He reports directly to Putin. On election night, Dmitriev is in contact with an individual traveling to New York City to attend the 2016 World Chess Championship. The individual's identity is redacted from the report. Not long after Clinton's concession to Trump, Dmitriev receives a simple message from this individual. Putin has won.